I work the midnight shift at a gas station off Rosedale Highway, one of those half-lit spots that still plays 80s rock through a tinny ceiling speaker. It's a quiet job. Stock the coolers, balance the drawer, and nod at the occasional trucker. Policy says that after midnight, the doors stay locked. Anyone who wants something uses the drawer slot. Safer that way. The night outside can be a different world. That night, a foggy February one, I was labeling a tray of burritos when someone knocked. It wasn't a bang or a shout, just 3 soft taps. I looked up. A woman stood just beyond the glow of the security light, hands cupped to the glass. Her hair was damp, jacket zipped to her throat. No car at the pumps, no sound but the cooler behind me. She leaned closer, lips moving. "Please, my car died. Can I wait inside?" It's the kind of thing you hear sometimes. Usually it's a lie for warmth or a ride. But she looked terrified, like she'd run out of something more than gas. I pressed the intercom button. "Sorry, store's closed to walk-ins. You can sit on the bench under the light. I'll call a patrol to check on your car." She shook her head, voice trembling through the speaker. "Someone followed me. Please, just for a minute." I looked around. Empty lot, fog thick enough to swallow the edge of the pumps. I thought for a second, but then hit the buzzer. "Straight to the counter," I said. Hands visible. She stepped inside, keeping close to the wall like she was afraid of being seen through the glass. Her eyes darted toward the door, then the windows. "You can lock it again," she said. "Please." I did. The lock thudded home, louder than usual. "Coffee?" I offered, because sometimes normal words keep a situation from unraveling. She nodded, wrapped her hands around the paper cup like it was medicine. "He followed me from the ramp," she said after a moment. "He slowed down when I pulled over, then he stopped ahead. I just ran." I called non-emergency, gave the dispatcher the details. They said a unit would come by soon. "You're safe here," I told her, and I meant it. But she wasn't acting like she believed me. She avoided standing directly under the camera and kept tugging her sleeves down over her wrists. When I asked her name, she paused. "Marcy," she said finally, but it didn't sound real. She stared at the back hallway. "That door? Does it lock?" "Twice," I said. "I checked it earlier." She nodded, but didn't look relieved. Just thoughtful. For a few minutes, I went back to wiping the counter, trying not to stare. Outside, the fog pressed against the glass. Then came a knock from somewhere near the side window. Not loud enough to be sure of. Not soft enough to ignore. I froze with the rag still in my hand, scanning the reflections. Nothing but my own face and the bright "no cash kept after hours" sign. "Probably the building settling," I said automatically. She looked up fast. "He does that," she whispered. "Taps first." A chill rippled through me. "You said your car broke down. Did you see who was following you?" She shook her head. I didn't look back. I walked the short hall to the back door anyway, turned both deadbolts, pressed my shoulder to the metal until I felt its weight. Solid. When I came back, she'd moved closer to the counter, eyes fixed on the front glass like she expected it to move. "You okay?" I asked. She didn't answer. Her gaze was locked on the convex mirror above the snack aisle, watching the reflection of the entrance. "He waits like that," she said finally. "Still. So you think he's gone?" I followed her line of sight. Just the empty lot. But I noticed something else. Her jacket sleeve had slipped, showing a white hospital band, edges frayed. She tugged it back quickly. "Marcy," I said carefully, "are you hurt?" "No." "Do you need medical?" "No, just tired." There's a kind of tired that sounds like surrender. I didn't push her. The phone buzzed. Dispatcher checking back. "Units on the way. 10 minutes. "Copy," I said, because that word feels like control. A few minutes later, headlights appeared through the fog, too slow for highway traffic. They crawled along the service road behind the station, then disappeared behind the dumpsters. No engine sound after that, just stillness. Marcy's hands tightened on the cup. "He's here," she said softly. I reached under the counter, touched the baseball bat I kept there more for comfort than defense. The motion sensor by the ice freezer blinked once, then twice, then stopped. Could have been a raccoon. Could have been the wind, but the timing felt wrong. When the patrol finally rolled up, blue lights washing the storefront, I almost exhaled. 2 officers stepped out. One motioned for me to stay put. The other spoke through the glass. I unlocked the inner door halfway. "She's inside," says someone followed her. The older cop nodded. "We'll talk to her." I turned. "They're here," I said. Marcy didn't move. "They're not here for me," she whispered. "They're here for him." The officers had her step outside while I stayed behind the counter. The younger one kept scanning the lot. The older talked to her in low tones. I watched through the glass, trying to read lips, but all I caught was her shaking her head and saying no over and over. After a minute, the older officer came back. "You let her in?" "Yeah. She said someone followed her." He sighed. "She's listed missing from a psychiatric facility in Tulare County. Walked out earlier tonight. You did fine calling it in." Behind him, she stood beside the cruiser, eyes fixed on me. She didn't look angry, just hollow. "Don't take me back to that man," she said suddenly. "Not to the cop, to me." The older officer turned. "All right, ma'am, let's talk in the car." He guided her toward the open door. She didn't resist, just kept her eyes on the store until the cruiser door shut. When they drove off, I realized I was still holding the bat. I set it down, turned off the coffee warmer, and just listened. The quiet had weight again. About an hour later, CHP called to confirm. "No disabled vehicles reported near your exit," the dispatcher said. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the empty pumps. That should have been it. A weird night, filed under stories for the next staff meeting. But my mind kept replaying her words. He followed me. What if she hadn't imagined it? A few days later, one of the officers stopped by for coffee. I asked if they ever found her car. He shook his head. "Never saw one. She's back in care though, no harm done." Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "Guess she's had a few incidents like that before. Runs off, shows up somewhere, says she's being followed." "By who?" I asked. "She never says the same thing twice." I nodded, but something in me refused to let the story end that neatly. A week later, while restocking mints, I found a wadded paper towel behind the display. It was damp, folded into a small hard square. Inside, written in pencil, "He likes glass." I just stood there, reading it over and over. It wasn't proof of anything, but I couldn't throw it away. I put it in the drop safe, the same place we store cash, because I didn't know where else to keep someone else's fear. Now, when I work, I don't buzz anyone in. Not ever. I hand them what they need through the drawer, call for help first. I move the bench under the brightest light, right in view of the camera. I keep the bat closer, the dispatch number on speed dial. I've thought about her more than I probably should. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she was dangerous. Maybe she was right. Whatever the truth is, it lingers in this place, in the reflection of headlights moving too slowly past the pumps. You can't work nights without learning that danger doesn't always kick the door in. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it knocks politely. Sometimes it smiles through the glass and asks for warmth. And maybe that's what unsettles me most. That I opened the door once, thinking I was helping, and I keep thinking that someone out there learned exactly how long it takes me to hesitate. When the morning shift arrives, I always give the same line, "Quiet night." It's true enough. But every time the lock buzzes open for them, there's a brief echo from that night. Her voice, small and steady. Don't take me back to that man. The door clicks shut, and I start another shift, pretending the world outside the glass isn't still watching. Because here's the truth. Every night since, I've kept that folded paper towel in my wallet. Not for proof, for memory. A reminder that mercy and caution are a coin you can only spend once. Working the closing shift at a grocery store is one of those jobs that sounds uneventful until you're the one locking up. I'd been doing it for about 3 years by then, Saturday nights especially. We closed at 10. By 9:30, the floors were buffed, the aisles were half empty, and the playlist switched from upbeat pop to whatever instrumental stuff corporate thought would make people hurry up and leave. That night started normal. I had self-checkout duty while my manager on duty, Rachel, handled the end-of-night paperwork in the office upstairs. The store had that end-of-shift calm, when everything hums but nothing moves. You could hear the squeak of a single cart from across the entire building. 10 minutes, folks, I called out, doing my usual sweep down the main aisle. We're closing up. That's when I noticed him. A tall man standing dead still in the cereal aisle, reading the back of a box like he was studying for a test. Mid-40s maybe, beard, dark hoodie. He didn't seem drunk or high, just absorbed. Need help finding something? I asked, trying to sound friendly. He looked up with this slow, polite smile. Just deciding, he said. All right, we're closing in 10, so I'll be quick, he interrupted, not unkindly, but something about the way he said it made me believe he wouldn't. Still, I didn't press him. People get weirdly defensive about cereal. At 10 sharp, the music cut off, the closing announcement played, and I locked the front doors. I watched through the camera feed as Rachel did her final sweep. Produce, frozen, dairy. When she came around to dry goods, the man was gone. She gave me a thumbs up through the security glass. 10:01, I said, clocking out of the register. He's gone, or I think he is. We started our usual routine. Count tills, dump trash, lights down one section at a time. The hum of the fluorescent bulbs softened, replaced by the muted whir of the HVAC. It always gets a little eerie after hours. You start hearing things you didn't notice before. The buzz of the freezers, the rattle of the ceiling vents, your own shoes squeaking. By 12:30, we were finishing inventory reports in the small upstairs office that overlooks the store floor. I was cross-checking spreadsheets when Rachel stopped typing. Did you hear that? She asked. I shook my head. Sounded like footsteps. There it was again. Creak, step, pause. It came from right above us, the narrow hallway where employees keep their lockers and uniforms. Could be the pipes, I said, trying not to sound like I believed otherwise. No, she said. Listen. We both sat still. The sound was too heavy, too uneven for pipes. A few steps, then what sounded like a zipper sliding open. Rachel frowned, stood up, and grabbed the office flashlight. Come on. The upstairs hallway always gave me weird vibes. It smelled faintly of detergent and metal, like an old gym locker. The walls were a dull beige that never quite looked clean, no matter how often maintenance painted them. We walked slowly, our footsteps echoing against the linoleum. The lockers lined both sides, all with cheap silver handles and combination locks. At the far end, near the emergency exit, a small window let in a square of orange light from the parking lot. Everything looked normal. No doors open, no signs of movement. Rachel crouched to check the floor. No muddy prints, no scuffs. Then she stopped. Behind the last row of lockers, barely visible from the hall, was a rolled-up sleeping bag. Next to it, 2 folded grocery bags, one filled with water bottles, the other with bananas and trail mix. "Somebody nested," Rachel whispered. A chill crept in. "You think he's still here?" She didn't answer. She just pointed to the ceiling vent above the lockers. The grate was slightly bent. We went back to the office, locked the door, and pulled up the camera feed. The screens showed every angle of the store floor. The aisles, the registers, the loading dock. But the upstairs hallway had no camera. The only coverage near it came from a feed showing the ladder that led from the back storage area to the upper maintenance level, just below the roof. Rachel scrubbed back through the footage to around closing time. We watched the man from the cereal aisle, clear as day on camera 12. He grabbed a box of Frosted Flakes, pretended to read the back again, then looked around. When the last customer walked past, he drifted toward the rear of the store. At 9:55 p.m., the camera near the ladder caught a quick blur of movement. Just a shape, a shoulder, an arm, slipping upward into the shadows. Then nothing. I felt it in my gut. "He climbed up before we closed," Rachel said. "He's been up there the whole time." We locked the office door, killed the lights, and called the police. The dispatcher said units were en route, told us to stay put and stay quiet. The line went dead, leaving only the low sound of the computer and the low creak from above. We sat in silence, waiting. Another sound, this time from directly overhead. A shuffle, then a slow drag like someone moving their weight on a surface they didn't want to squeak. We didn't talk, didn't move, just listened. The noise came again, closer to the vent above the office. Then it stopped. The officers arrived around 1 a.m., 2 cruisers, their lights flashing blue and red through the glass. We met them at the loading dock, unlocked the back door, and explained everything. They moved in fast. One stayed downstairs, while 2 others took the stairwell to the employee area. We followed a few minutes later. The sleeping bag and supplies were still there, untouched. The officers fanned out, one shining his flashlight along the ceiling grid. "Hold on," one said, pointing to the vent. "That's been moved." He stepped onto a chair, pushed up the ceiling tile, then lowered it again, motioning for his partner. They climbed up with the portable ladder from maintenance. I remember the sound of insulation crinkling, followed by one officer's voice, "Got something." A minute later, he emerged holding a pair of boots, muddy, worn through the soles. "They're still warm," he said. But whoever owned them was gone. They spent the next hour sweeping the roof, the ducts, and the loading dock area. The theory was that he'd slipped out the ladder access door that led to the side alley sometime between our call and their arrival. When they came back down, they took photos of the sleeping bag and the supplies, then left it all bagged as evidence. One officer, young, looked barely older than me, tried to reassure us. "You did the right thing," he said. "Probably just someone homeless looking for warmth. Still, smart you checked the cameras." I nodded, but the explanation didn't sit right. That setup behind the lockers wasn't desperation. It was routine. The sleeping bag was neatly rolled, the food sorted. Whoever it was had been staying there for a while. We reopened the next morning like nothing happened. The store didn't want word getting out. Corporate came in, reviewed security footage, and installed a badge lock on the upstairs door. Rachel and I were told to keep quiet about it. Something about avoiding unnecessary panic. But after that night, I couldn't unhear the sounds. Every little creak made me stop. A few days later, one of the maintenance guys, Mike, pulled me aside. "You hear what they found?" he whispered. "When they took down that ceiling panel?" I thought he meant the boots. "No," he said. "They found insulation pulled back, like someone had been sleeping up there too." That explained the zipper sound. He'd probably been keeping his stuff in the vent cavity, sealing it up each morning before we opened. Mike grinned like it was a weird curiosity, but I didn't find it funny. I kept picturing that moment. Him slipping up the ladder at 9:55, silent while the rest of us were ringing out customers. Watching us. A week later, I was alone in the office finishing reports when I heard the same creak again. Overhead, same rhythm. I froze, then turned on the ceiling fan out of pure instinct, like noise would make me invisible. I told myself it was the building settling. That was before the dust drifted down from the vent above me. Just a pinch. Enough to make me get up and leave without finishing the report. The next morning, I told Rachel. She called maintenance again. They went up, checked everything. All clear, they said. I believed them because I had to. 3 weeks later, another store in our chain, same layout, same region, reported a break-in. The night staff found sleeping gear in the ceiling. No cameras caught anyone leaving there either. They thought maybe he was moving between stores. The company hired a third-party security firm after that. They added locks, cameras, motion detectors. But even now, whenever I work a late shift, I look up at the vents before I turn the lights off. I try not to think about it too much. Still, I switched departments soon after. I couldn't close anymore. Not after knowing that the quiet, locked building we thought was ours had someone else's heartbeat inside it. Now, every time I walk past the cereal aisle, even as a customer, I check the ceiling first. Because once, I thought I knew who'd left the store, and I was wrong. I cleaned 12 floors every night. Same loop: vacuum, trash, bathrooms. My badge got me in at 9:45, my caddy rolled behind me like a tired pet. I'd keep one earbud in, one ear open. The building spoke if you listened. Vents sighing, pipes clicking, the elevator groaning to itself. The marble lobby always looked too clean to be real, the air sharp with polish. The mirror in the elevator was my only company. I'd watch myself shrink behind the reflection of the closing doors. Floor lights blinked in sequence. That quiet rhythm calmed me. By midnight, the city outside disappeared into glass reflections. I liked it better that way. No eyes watching. Floor 7 always slowed me down. It had a law office that never emptied their Keurig pods and a women's restroom with a weirdly installed stall door. Decades ago, someone mounted it backward, hinges facing the wall. When it was closed, the door hid itself. You had to wedge sideways to reach the toilet. I used to laugh about it. Buildings had quirks. So did night crews. I'd leave that door open when I finished cleaning, just to remind myself the stall was done. A week into January, temperatures sunk below 10 degrees. On my second pass through 7, I noticed the door shut again. I'd left it open. I figured the draft from the vent must have nudged it, but the hinge was heavy. It didn't move easily. 2 nights later, it happened again. Open earlier, close later. I even checked the hinge. Stiff, no swing. I told myself not to think too hard. Once you start chasing weird, every sound turns into a ghost. At 2 a.m., I came back to mop the baseboards. Kneeling down, I ran the mop under each stall. Habit made me shine my flashlight beneath the backward one. And oh my, I remember it clear as day. I saw 2 bare feet. Toes pointed toward me. No movement, no shoes in sight. For a second, my brain refused to label them as human, just shapes pale and dusty. Then it clicked. Custodial, I said automatically. Building's closed. I need you to answer. Nothing, I swallowed. Ma'am? Still nothing. The feet stayed perfectly still. My instincts split. One side said run, the other said don't turn your back. I backed out slowly, pushing the cart until its wheel bumped the doorframe. My phone was in my pocket, battery blinking red. No service bars in the center of the building. I grabbed the wall phone inside the janitor's closet. Dead tone. The radio on my hip? Static. Then silence. Of course. The hall felt longer than usual. I looked back at the women's door. No movement. If someone was in there, I couldn't leave them alone. If someone wasn't, then I was staring at nothing and acting like a rookie. Neither option was good. I took the elevator down 2 floors to security. Luis, the overnight guard, was at his desk, sipping coffee from a thermos the size of a gas can. "Problem?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "I saw feet. Bare ones. 7th floor restroom. Door shut again." He didn't joke or question it, he just grabbed his key ring. We go together. The elevator ride back up felt wrong, like being swallowed by silence. When the doors opened, my cart waited in the hallway where I'd left it. The restroom door was shut, no footprints leading in or out. Luis held up his flashlight. "You do the talking," he whispered. I stepped forward. "Custodial. Security's with me. If you're in there, say something." Silence. Luis nodded toward the door. I pulled. It resisted, then gave way. Empty. Toilet lid up. Tank lid shifted crooked. No feet. No dust smudge where they'd been. Luis checked the stalls one by one. "Nothing," he said, then eyed the tank. "Hold on." He lifted the lid. Inside, a Ziploc bag stuffed with a toothbrush and a cell phone sealed inside another baggie. We just stared. He lowered the lid carefully. "Somebody lived in a bathroom stall," he said. He called the second guard, Tori, and reported it to dispatch. While he talked, I stood in the doorway feeling every sound of the building. When the second guard arrived, they swept the stairwells and the mechanical room. No one. Luis sealed the items in a bag and logged the find. Possible overnight trespass. He told me to stick close until the sweep was done. "Probably homeless," he said. He had that calm, practiced tone of someone who'd seen too much weird to be shocked. The next morning, the company told us not to mention it to tenants. Maintenance came and removed the faulty stall door. "Safety upgrade," they said. Corporate loves euphemisms. I kept working. Nights don't stop for one strange incident. After that, security added hourly patrols between 1 and 5 a.m. Luis walked every floor, sometimes whistling softly so we'd know he was near. Maintenance started checking ceilings. The company promised to add cameras in employee areas. None of that erased the image of those feet, though. Back on my route, I couldn't stop the small paranoia habits. I'd knock before entering any restroom. I'd announce myself, even if I knew I was alone. I stopped wearing earbuds. Every creak made me pause. The janitor who covered floor 3 told me she'd found fresh dust trails under a stall the same week we discovered the stash upstairs. No feet, just a faint heel mark. Management brushed it off as residual traffic. Luis didn't. He started keeping a record book of every sound or sighting. "You think this'll help?" I asked. "It helps me," he said. "Buildings talk. You just need to remember what they said yesterday." For a week, nothing happened. The silence was almost worse. It gave space for imagination. Working nights changes how you think about buildings. You stop assuming emptiness equals safety. You learn that silence is active. It hides things until you trip over them. People imagine night crews as lonely but peaceful. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes you hum to your vacuum, talk to yourself, count hours until dawn. But every so often you feel a pause in the rhythm, like someone else inhaled at the same moment you did. That's what fear really is on night shifts. Not screams, not jump scares. Just realizing the building's breath doesn't match yours. I stayed another year before switching jobs. On my last week, I wrote a little reminder on a Post-it and stuck it inside my cart behind the disinfectant bottle where no one else would notice. Knock. Announce. Back out. Simple. True. My own small rulebook. Sometimes I dream of that tower. The glossy lobby, the elevator mirror, the faint hum of lights shutting down one by one. In the dream, I'm back on floor 7. The stall door stands open. I work doing night shift maintenance at a hospital downtown. For 12 years, my nights have been measured in coffee and machine noise. When the city sleeps, the hospital never really does. It just slows down, trading the chaos of day for a rhythm only the tired recognize. My route doesn't change. Every hour I walk the same loop. Boiler room, chillers, elevators, loading dock, back through the glass corridor that faces the staff parking lot. The routine keeps things simple. Machines don't lie. They fail, they leak, they squeak, but they don't pretend. That night, around 2:10 a.m., I was doing my East Corridor pass, clipboard in hand, jotting down readings. The glass wall overlooked the lot, rows of cars under flat white light. Usually it's empty, except for a few nurses swapping shifts or security making a round. But that night, someone was there. At first, I thought it was a reflection, my own outline in the glass. But when I cupped my hands around my face to cut the glare, I saw him clearly. A man standing between 2 parked cars, still as a post, facing the entrance doors, arms hanging at his sides. That alone wasn't too weird. Visitors sometimes wander into staff areas confused about exits. I'd seen drunks and grieving relatives alike standing in strange places at stranger hours. I picked up the phone by the door and called security. "Got a guy out in the east lot," I said, between rows 2 and 3 facing the main entrance. The dispatcher sounded distracted. "Both guards are on the 5th floor. Patient situation. Can you keep eyes on him?" "Copy that," I said, and hung up. I flicked the corridor lights off to get a clearer view. Outside, the man hadn't moved. The glow from the lot lamps made his outline sharp. Then I blinked, and he was closer. 1 row closer to the building. Same posture, same blank stance. I leaned against the glass. Maybe the reflection from another window made it look that way. I unlocked the side door, stepped under the overhang, and aimed my flashlight into the lot. Nothing. Just asphalt and a plastic candy wrapper tumbling in the breeze. I swung the beam across the rows, nothing but silent cars and painted lines. I turned to go back inside. Then I looked through the opposite window, and he was there again. Near the crosswalk this time, still facing the doors. I hit the lock override, setting the automatic doors to badge-only access, and called security again. "Still out there?" the dispatcher asked. "Closer," I said. "Crosswalk." She told me they were sending one of the guards down with a spotlight. I stayed by the glass. The figure hadn't moved. Just watched the doors. A few minutes later, I saw the golf cart lights sweep across the lot. The 2 guards, Harlan and the new kid, Patel, pulled up near the gate. Harlan stepped out with the handheld spotlight and panned it over the cars, then down the row where I'd seen the figure. The beam passed across a column near the entrance gate and caught what looked like a sleeve sticking out from behind it. Both guards reacted instantly. Harlan walked toward it. Patel angled the spotlight higher. But when they reached the pillar, the sleeve was gone. Nothing there. Just a concrete base, a gate arm, and a trash can half full of cigarette butts. They looked up at me through the glass. I shrugged and met them outside. "Footprints," Patel said, pointing at the pavement near the crosswalk. The marks were clear, the kind of tread you get from cheap work boots. They led straight from between the parked cars toward the curb and then stopped, right at the edge. Harlan crouched down, ran a finger over one of them. "Still damp," he said. "That's recent." We looked across the lot again. Silent cars, flat light. No movement. Probably someone from the psych wing wandered off again, I said, trying to make it smaller. Then where's he now? Harlan said. We swept the lot together anyway. 3 of us. Walking slow rows, flashlights crossing paths like a search grid. Nothing, not a sound but the noise of the nearby transformer. We circled back. I noticed something small, half a cigarette still burning near the trash can. Propped up on the edge, filter down, like someone had set it there mid-smoke and never came back. Fresh, Patel said, still warm. Harlan just stared at it. We'll check cameras. We went inside, past the double doors that sighed as they sealed. In the security office, the lot footage looked grainy but serviceable. We scrubbed back to 2:10 a.m. The camera showed the rows of cars, the streetlight reflections, and then a shape appeared halfway between the rows. No face, no color, just a silhouette melting into the pixels. That's him, I said. Or that's nothing, Harlan said. You know these cameras glitch. Still, he marked the timestamp and logged it. I tried to forget it, but around 3 a.m., walking past the glass corridor again, I found myself slowing down. The lot was empty, but the stillness felt weird, like too quiet. The next night, I caught Nurse Abby from the ICU by the badge reader near the same door. She looked unsettled. You working last night? She asked. Yeah. She rubbed her arms. Someone tailgated my badge around 2. I thought it was a coworker, but when I turned, nobody. The door didn't open. I thought maybe it was the sensor. What time? I asked. 1:50, give or take. I didn't tell her about the figure. Just nodded and said I'd mention it to security. We added her note to the incident log. Attempted tailgate, no entry. It lined up with the camera timestamp almost exactly. For a few weeks, nothing happened. Then, late February, it did. I was doing my rounds again. Same route, same hour. 2:12 a.m. The lot was wet from freezing rain. And there he was, down by the gate this time. Pale coat, arms loose, looking toward the entrance like he was trying to read the building. I didn't blink or move. I just watched. My first thought wasn't fear. It was, here we go again. I called it in. Lot figure, I said. At the gate. The dispatcher paused. Her tone flattened. Copy. Sending Harlan and Patel. I kept the doors locked and stayed by the window. When they arrived, the spotlight swept across the asphalt. It landed on the gate pillar, the same one as before, and this time I saw it happen. The light hit the space behind it, and for half a second, something like a shoulder shimmered there. Then it was gone. The guards moved fast, crossed the distance, found nothing. Again. But this time, there were prints. 3 of them, leading right up to the base of the gate. Clear tread, deep edges. Then nothing. We didn't say anything for a few seconds, just stood there with flashlights making halos in the mist. Finally, Harlan sighed. If this is a prank, it's a damn good one. We reviewed the cameras again. Same result, a distortion. A long streak of shadow where a person should have been. No face, no body, just motion pretending to be human. The next morning, security reviewed it all with day shift management. No conclusions. The footage didn't show enough for police. But by 9 a.m., 3 different staff members had reported strange encounters. A nurse said she'd gotten a phone call from a man claiming his wife was admitted and that he'd forgotten something in her room. He repeated the same line, word for word, 3 times when she said visiting hours were over. The number was blocked. An orderly said a man had been seen standing by the hospice garden statue earlier that week. Same posture, same stillness. When approached, he simply turned and walked into the darkness between streetlights. The hospital decided to add the staff lot to our nightly patrols permanently. I didn't complain. I wanted eyes on it too. After that, I made it part of my rounds. 2:10, 2:30, 3 o'clock. I'd stop by the window, look out. Sometimes I'd even step outside under the overhang just to hear the air and reassure myself it was empty. Once, when I checked the security monitor, I noticed a faint smear near the same crosswalk spot. Not solid enough to call a person, just movement pretending to have purpose. That's what unnerves you most in places like this. Things pretending. You can't reason with what won't act like it's real. It's been 4 years since that winter. We still call it the lot incident. Harlan's retired. Patel moved to day shift. Abby quit nursing. I'm still here, same rounds, same quiet hours. Every so often, the automatic doors at the east entrance open and close with no badge. Sensors can misread a gurney strap or a moth, sure. But when it happens around 2:10 a.m., I still look up at the monitor before I go back to my checklist. People ask me sometimes, what do you think it was? I don't give them ghost stories. I just tell them what I know. Twice, a figure stood in that lot when no one should have been there. Twice, it moved closer without walking. Twice, the prints stopped at the curb. Everything else, the phone calls, the cameras, the cigarette, it all adds up to a shape of something we still don't have a name for. You work enough nights, you learn that some things aren't meant to be fixed, just documented. Night shifts at roadside motels are slow, predictable things. The kind of quiet that doesn't make noise so much as hum around you. My job was simple. Keep the front desk neat, brew the coffee at 4 a.m., balance the drawer, and make sure no one snuck into the pool after hours. I liked the routine. The place wasn't fancy. 32 rooms, 2 floors, all doors facing the lot. A ficus that leaned toward the air vent, a faded vacancy sign that buzzed when the wind hit it. Most nights, I'd wipe down the counter, refill the muffin display, and listen to the swamp cooler wheeze behind me. That night, January 12, 2018, was like every other. No walk-ins, no noise from the taqueria next door, not even a got any spare toothbrushes call, just silence. Around 1:15 a.m., I was flipping through the guest ledger when I heard footsteps. I counted 3 slow steps. They weren't outside, weren't down the hall. Above me, room 108. The ceiling creaked directly over my chair. A single back and forth pace. At first, I thought plumbing. Our pipes knocked sometimes when the temperature dropped, but the sound came again, heel to toe. Not random, not mechanical. Someone walking. I looked at the screen that showed the room list. 108. Vacant. Cleaned. Locked at 6:22 p.m., no key activity since then. I picked up the phone and dialed housekeeping out of habit before realizing no one would answer. Everyone clocked out at 7. The line rang once, then fell quiet. Another step. Then another. Then nothing. I stared at the ceiling until the silence felt heavier than the sound. Finally, I grabbed the clipboard with the master keys, my small mag light, and stepped outside. Our second-floor walkway faced the freeway. From below, everything looked calm. Curtains drawn, porch lights on. The only movement, a cat darting between vending machines. When I rounded the corner, I saw it. A faint light glowing under the door of 108. It was the kind of light you get from a bathroom fixture. The room shouldn't have had any lights on. The last guest had checked out that morning. Marta, the housekeeper, had reset it herself. I watched her drop the key in the tray. Still, I told myself it had to be something simple. A lamp left on. A timer glitch. But as I got closer, the curtain moved. Just once. A tiny shift inward, like someone adjusting it with 2 fingers. Then, stillness. My hand went cold on the key ring. I took a slow breath, crouched a little, and peered through the gap at the bottom of the curtain. Darkness. I slid the master key into the slot. Red light. Tried again. Red. Third time. Green. The deadbolt turned, but not easily. It dragged like something had pushed against it from the inside. Front desk, I called. Maintenance check. Nothing. I pushed the door open a few inches. Inside, the room was perfect. Bedspread tight, pillowcases crisp. A single ripple near the foot of the mattress, like someone had pressed a hand there. Then I heard water. The bathroom fan was running, the shower going full blast. Front desk, I said again, louder this time. Nothing. I walked forward until I could reach the fan switch and flipped it off. The sudden silence made the water sound even louder. I leaned into the doorway, reached for the handle, and turned off the shower. The tub was empty. No wet footprints. No towel out of place. That's when the closet door creaked. A small sound, just an inch of movement. Wood rubbing metal. I turned toward it. Hello? Silence. I stepped back to the doorway, keeping my eyes on that gap. I reached behind me for the doorknob and pulled the door shut from the outside. Then I ran my finger across the deadbolt, still secure. Back at the desk, I keyed the radio. Ron, you up? A burst of static, then my manager's tired voice. What's going on? I've got activity in 108. Door was locked, light under it, shower running, no guest inside. You went in? I had to check. I locked it again. He sighed. Okay, call non-emergency. I'm heading in. I hung up, dialed Tucson PD, and explained the situation. The operator sounded calm, maybe too calm, as she said, "We'll send an officer. Don't enter again." Fine by me. While waiting, I poured myself coffee, then poured it out. I couldn't stop looking up at the clock. 1:28, 1:30, 1:31. A cruiser pulled in at 1:32. The officer was a woman about my age, neat bun, steady eyes. She took my report, asked to see the room. We climbed the stairs. No light under the door this time. She knocked once, twice, then slid the master key in and stepped back, flashlight ready. The room opened clean, everything exactly as I'd left it, except the ripple on the bed was gone. She checked the bathroom. Wet, mirror spotless, closet empty. Back at the desk, she asked for the security footage. I pulled it up. The timestamp for 1:17 showed the exterior corridor perfectly still. No one entering 108. No shadows, no reflections. The stairwell camera only caught 2 moths dancing in front of the lens. The officer typed something in her notepad. If it happens again, call us first. Don't go alone. She left me her card and drove off. Ron came in 10 minutes later, hair half-combed, buttoning his shirt. He checked 108 himself, pacing like he wanted it to argue with him. It didn't. Back downstairs, he said, probably a pressure surge. Shower valves do that sometimes. Deadbolt was stiff, I said, like something was against it. He rubbed his eyes. Then don't open it again. He left me with the clipboard and a rule. Log it, lock it, leave it. The next night, I came in early. I didn't mention 108 to anyone. Didn't have to. Word spreads fast in small places. Housekeeping had already started calling it the hot room. By 12:45 a.m., I was quietly daring the silence not to change. At 1 a.m., footsteps. I stared at the ceiling. Not water lines. Not creaks. Footsteps. I picked up the phone and called non-emergency. The same officer arrived 20 minutes later. We went upstairs together. The tape I'd placed on the latch as a tell, still sealed. She looked at me. You sure this is the right room? I nodded. I'm sure. She unlocked it, opened the door halfway, and stopped. We both looked in. Light was on. Bathroom fan running again. The shower wasn't, though. We stepped inside. Careful. The air was warmer than it should have been. "Anyone else with keys?" she asked. "Just management and me." She checked the closet. Empty. She clicked her flashlight off and stood there listening. I could hear the hum of the fridge in the mini kitchenette, the tick of the AC vent, and faintly, footsteps in the ceiling. Except this time, we were on the top floor. The officer and I locked eyes. She stopped, listening. One step, then another, then silence. "Okay, you're not imagining it." Without another word, she keyed her radio and bolted down the hall toward the stairwell. I followed, keeping back as she sprinted across the lot. From the lot, she aimed her beam upward and froze. Someone was up there. A man crouched low, moving across the roofline like he thought he was invisible. His hands and knees pressed flat as he crept toward the rear side of the building, the light catching his jacket just enough to make him reel. "Hey, stop!" she shouted, already running. He didn't look back. He jumped down, must have been an 8-foot drop, and landed behind the ice machine. By the time she rounded the corner, he was sprinting full speed toward the tree line behind the motel. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12, she said into her radio. "We've got a male suspect fleeing westbound into the woods. I need a cruiser on the far side, near the drainage canal." The woods swallowed him whole. One second he was there, the next he was nothing but the sound of branches snapping and the beam of her flashlight chasing air. Backup arrived within minutes, 2 cruisers. They swept the perimeter, scanning with spotlights until the rain started coming down harder. An hour later, the call came in. They'd caught him. A cruiser picked him up on the opposite side of the woods, walking along the frontage road like he'd just stepped out for a smoke. No ID, no bag, no explanation. Just said he'd been looking for a place to stay. They cuffed him without a struggle. Later that night, when the officers came back to grab the security footage, one of them told me, "He's not saying much, but he had room keys on him. One of them matches 108. The following afternoon, maintenance checked the roof access. Locked. Cobwebbed. Untouched. Housekeeping refused to clean 108 alone after that. Ron rolled his eyes but started assigning 2-person teams for efficiency. 3 days later, a couple from Phoenix checked out of 108 and left a note on the counter. "Nice stay. Quiet motel. Only weird thing, water ran for a few minutes around 1 a.m. We thought it was next door." Ron laughed, tossed it in the bin. I fished it out and pinned it to the incident board. He didn't say anything, but he didn't assign that room again for 2 weeks. I kept working nights, because that's what you do. You stay polite, keep the coffee hot, and try not to let the strange stuff crawl too far into your head. Still, every time I passed 108, I found myself slowing down, looking at the frame. People still ask what I think it was. A squatter? A drifter who'd learned how to stay hidden? Something worse? Maybe that man wasn't the first one to wait in there. Maybe he wasn't even the last. All I know is this. Every time I hear running water where there shouldn't be any, I think of that room. If these stories made you realize that routine can be the most dangerous thing of all, smash that like button, subscribe so you never miss the next scary story, and tell me which story hit closest to home. And speaking of home, click now to watch 4 disturbing Home Alone horror stories, because sometimes the safest place isn't safe at all. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.